What's up, everybody? This is Karak with ACG, and welcome to a Spider-Man spoiler cast. Yes, it's called Spoiler Cast for a reason, because there will be spoilers in it. Now, this ended up airing last week on my other podcast, the Ham Radio podcast that I do with Mr. Matty Plays, where we were lucky enough to get YongYea to show up. He really did like Spider-Man. We wanted to just sit down and talk about all of the different elements that we liked. I really do enjoy doing these kind of spoiler casts, so I wanted to see what you guys thought of it. And because this was on Matty's channel, he'll be leading the discussion, but we all get our fair chance to talk. Peace out and enjoy.
Salutations, everybody. It is Matty here today with episode 170 of the Ham Radio Podcast.
And it is still me, Karak with ACG.
Very funny.
And this is YongYea. Thank you so much for having me on board. Super excited to talk about Spider-Man, one of my favorite games this year, and what I think is a dream come true for someone who's been watching a lot of, following a lot of the Spider-Man scene. So yeah, let's just dive right into it and
absolutely, man. We had a really strict embargo for the review, but we're taking the lid off of it. We're talking about everything in Spider-Man PS4. So I don't know why you'd click on this video if you didn't want spoilers, because it's clearly labeled Spoiler Cast, but we are going to be ruining the whole game for you right now. So we're getting right into it because there's so many major story beats we got to go through that we originally couldn't with the review period. So let's start off with the connection between Otto Octavius and
you didn't tell people to flick a buck. Fuck, I was ready to sing.
Wow,
I was ready to
you
do
were
the
actually
intro.
ready this week? Okay. So,
no, but I noticed you missed it. I just want to make sure you say it.
You got me excited. I honestly don't want to tell people to flick a buck now because you refuse to sing.
Buck.
There we go. Okay. Patreon.com/Mr. Matty Plays. Anyway.
There we go. Move on.
Now, Otto Octavius is connected to Peter Parker. How'd you guys feel about this? Was it forced? Was it a surprise?
It felt very like Sam Raimi, strangely. Like, with the Spider-Man 2, they kind of had a connection there. So, yeah, I was kind of surprised that they went for that. But pleasantly surprised, I would say.
Yeah.
Because that relationship, it got really fleshed out throughout the whole... And it became the sort of the foundation for the whole game, for the whole storyline. And it culminated into just something really touching and emotional and tragic. So I loved it personally.
Yeah, to be honest, you could really, it's a testament to that when I'm going to jump all the way to the end here, when Otto's just laying on the table, completely crippled, can't move at all, and Peter's just deciding whether or not to walk away from him. And like, I was feeling for him at that moment. Part of me was saying like, stay with him, man, support your guy. But like the other part was like, he's lost. You got to just leave him.
Gone.
And so I agree that they really built a good relationship there, and I didn't expect it to become the foundation of the story. Really, when now that you mention it, it was something that I was like, "Oh, cool, he's here." I'm sure this is a framework for some extra gameplay, like the puzzles that they had, but it ended up being so much more than that.
Yeah.
What about you, Karak?
Yeah, I would agree. I would say that without him, the cornerstone of the story wouldn't be there, not just plot-wise, but gameplay-wise with the experiments. And you can't reflect Peter Parker as being hyper-intelligent without having him doing some stuff. Makes perfect sense that the doctor's like your mentor. And, of course, then that ends up switching around at the end, which I think is typical tragic tale. So I liked it. I thought it was awesome. I also just have to give a kudo to Insomniac, because the character model for Octavius was it was phenomenal. There was even reflections. I don't remember if it got into my review. There's even reflections, like perfect reflections in his glasses when he was talking to Peter, and you could see Peter's eye. Like, it was just and that helps me. If they look that good, that makes me like lean in and go, this character's real. And the voice actors also, because I love to cover voice, and that fucking voice actor that did him, and as he's talking and as the recordings get more and more like sinister, you can literally like sense him falling off a cliff. You're like, the first ones are like, he's a scientist, blah blah blah, and then all of a sudden you hear him say in one of them like, I can't even remember what he says. He says something like, is nosy, or it's just a little cynical bit, and then they continue from that point on. So fantastic.
It's like a combination of both the writing and the acting that just kind of meld perfectly to create that very natural progression towards a more sinister Octavius, and it's just
Yeah.
fucking awesome.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it, because it wasn't like it was this flip of the switch, all right, he's a villain now.
Mhm.
You know,
No,
you saw like little outbursts, like when he was trying really hard to, I think they were trying to control like the robotic arm or something, and it didn't work out, and like he kind of like banged the desk. He's like, damn it all!
Yep.
And like he started getting angry, and you're like, that was a little out of character. All right, maybe he's just like is really passionate about his work and he's pissed, and then you see it again, and you see it a little bit more, and you're like, okay, something's wrong with him, and then you eventually find out at that very moment what is happening to him and why he's so invested in his work.
Oh, sorry. Did you go listen to the first time the chick comes and she's talking to him about the grant? They go into the room. Did you go and listen?
Yeah,
because if you listen, there's one part where he gets like irate for just a second and then switches back to normal. And it's just for a moment when he's talking to her, and she says something. He's like, "But we've had this and this and this," and he's sort of like, and that's what they did well. And you can't tell me that was on accident, because the voice director would have had to say, you know, oh, that was over the top or whatever. And instead, there's these hints everywhere. There's even hints on the chalkboards. I don't know if you guys noticed that, or on the blackboards, all the hints, little things that you could pick up on. It was fantastic.
I was fascinated by how many assets were created for this game, especially in that area where it felt like there was something new in every single corner. It truly felt like a lab. Like there were, you know, hallmarks to previous comics, but there were also like little universe building things, like you said, the chalkboard, where you were able to start piecing together like where he started getting all this money from in the later game, and how it all connects.
It's like this pocket mini world within the open world. That like there's so much happening just within that little room alone that you can pick up on, and the way it all just develops, and the little things that change throughout to give you hints of where this is all headed.
Another thing that blew me away was the models. If you notice, they repeat. So like there was a propane torch in one area, like the handheld one.
Right.
And that's actually what the actors use on the crane section at the water to weld the cranes. You can see them with the same model. So what that does is that causes a gamer to see that replicated. Because how many times have you walked into a game room in a video game and you see these items that will never ever be anywhere else? Like they're not, you won't see them. And instead with Spider-Man, there were a couple things, tools that you saw later in other areas, and that sort of connects everything together. And I think it was a really well done. Really well done.
Kind of hints on what you were mentioning in your walking the walk, a little bit out of place, I guess. But you know how you said, for example, like the trash, it wasn't just like a green trash can with brown on top.
Right.
It popped in a unique way because they added actually like colored bits inside the trash.
Their color, whoever worked on color theory, even though a lot of people don't like it, that word used that way, I've got a lot of shit for it. But the way they use color to sort of make people feel emotions. But what was interesting there was they were popping color in places that other games have never done. Go to most games, look in the trash, it's a brown heap. It looks like the most rotten, nasty fucking pile of trash you've ever seen. There's no color. And everywhere in Spider-Man, there was every single time there was some little bit of color to cause your eyes to have this place where you could focus. And it didn't look like a mesh that was just roughly textured, and then that was it. And to me, that was their color use in that game. I don't know about you guys, but like when it was bright and like that white sun, it fucking looked so good.
Oh yeah, yeah. When the lighting hits just right and all these different things come together, from the landscape of Manhattan, New York, to the minute details in Spider-Man's suit, it all just comes across so beautifully.
Yeah, it's a perfect game for photo mode. Like we've seen a lot of good photo modes, but this is one that, when I see it, like all the pictures on Twitter, like the whole universe is playing this game, everyone's sharing their little screenshots. I have never found myself so frequently stopping to just click, look at the picture, zoom in on the picture, look at the little details to the background, to the foreground. It's a tremendous game in that respect. But back to some of the story stuff. We'll move forward a little bit. I thought for me that the one moment that really, I wouldn't say reeled me in, because it was from the start I was hooked. Just, I found this web swinging captivating, the combat flowed smoothly. But what grabbed me in this story, the first moment, was what happened with Officer Jefferson Davis. There's a bombing. You're starting to see what Martin Lee is capable of. It really slams home like, oh, he's the main villain, or at least at that time he was. And you just think to yourself, okay, so this game is going to show us something a little more mature. You know, I feel like Marvel versus DC in various parts of their universe, you know, people look at Marvel as more of, I guess, I don't want to say kid friendly, but PG styled storytelling. Yeah. And when you're seeing, you know, City Hall, I think it was, getting absolutely destroyed and tons of people in peril, Miles Morales losing his father, and then them introducing him at that point as a playable character, it really hits the player with a lot. So how did you guys digest that scene? Did you find it as powerful as I did, or am I alone on that aspect?
It was surprisingly brutal the way that all was displayed. Like, there were times when, like, Miles was like hiding, and then he would look, and then some dude would just he would
get offed.
Like,
stabbed too. The one guy gets stabbed. Remember? You're just like, damn.
Yeah, like I was like, wow, they're going all out here. They aren't pulling any punches, and I think the scene needed that to convey the kind of demon that lies within.
I like what you did there,
Mr. Lee. Yeah,
yeah. What?
But yeah, I mean, I thought that whole scenario. I think I'm with you there, where that's when it really that's when the story really picked up, but also that's when it really hit me like, oh, like the creators of this game really want to hit you on an emotional level. They don't want to hold anything back. They really want to tell the story they want to tell without pulling any punches. And I began to appreciate the game more as a result.
And we don't know Insomniac as a storyteller. That's the thing. We know them for Ratchet and Clank, Sunset Overdrive, just to name 2 series that are
more
fun,
lighthearted.
Yeah, charming, exactly, lighthearted, where, you know, to see Spider-Man it told not only in that light, but from a developer like Insomniac, it's not like they sacrificed that personality, but the fact that they included a new edge to it was really astounding to me. Karak, what'd you feel about that scene?
We'll talk about the other characters later, like I'm sure the playable characters that aren't Spider-Man. I am not as in love with them as everybody else. In fact, I really disliked those parts of the story. But to me, it wasn't necessarily that Miles was suddenly playable. It was his mom and his mom's reaction and like trying to get him to stop from running into danger. I actually like the side characters. So like he was saying, the guy being shot in the face, that I didn't really care who I was. It was more about what I was seeing. I didn't, you know, I get that his dad died, and I was like, okay. And to me, that's I guess an expected story. I was expecting that to happen, something like that. But just watching the shit around the side was what I did in that entire section. It was like looking at people dying all the time. And there were people on fire. There were people crushed in vehicle. And you were just like you said, you go into this going, is it going to be PG-13? Or is it going to be like the Karak version where people are fucking just getting offed all the time? And it started out PG. I mean, I think you guys would agree. It started out fairly lighthearted. And it was like, da-da-da-da-da. And jokes about not delivering pizza. And then suddenly these guys are getting impaled. Also, if you listen to the fight during that scene, there's a lot of foreshadowing in that battle that you have with him as well, which I really liked. They started to talk about like the darker you and, you know, who can you trust and all the shit. And you're like, why is he fucking saying this? So I really dug that.
Absolutely. As for Miles Morales in general, though, we find out later in the game he gets, we'll call it conveniently, bit by a spider, because the way we were talking about pre-podcast, the way he was transported, or the spider itself, Spider 42 was transported, a little funky. You know how it was on MJ for so long, and he's like, I'm not gonna bite you, but I'll bite the next person I'm on. Just you watch, and that's Miles. After that point in time, we see him get bit. We know what's gonna happen, and at the post-credit scenes, we see Miles pretty much tell Peter, hey, I have these funky superpowers. And it's delivered in a way that felt out of almost a movie. It had that delivery, that charm, where, you know, he's like, it's kind of weird, so I'll just show you. And he hops up on the ceiling, and then you see Peter hop up too, and he's like, it's not that weird. And it was a feel-good moment. What did you guys feel about finding out that, I imagine, whether it's in DLC or Spider-Man 2, inevitably, that there will be a playable Miles Morales character? Do you think it's going to be co-op? I don't want to jump too far ahead with speculation, but do you think it's just going to be 2 different Spider-Men in the same universe, and they kind of do what they did with MJ, where They try to push the story forward in different ways, now having two different Spider-Man in the universe. I want to get some thoughts on that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting how they handle that if they're going to have multiple... I mean, they've already played around with multiple playable characters in the Spider-Man game, so I'd imagine that in the next one, we're going to be able to play as both, each with their own different story threads that eventually merge, and then it all goes from there. I wonder what's going to differentiate them gameplay-wise, if that's to happen.
Right.
Are they going to have different gadgets or powers or what have you? It all depends on how they use this. It's an interesting bit of, like, let's see what we do with this that they left there. But until I actually see how that all culminates, I can't say for sure whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, whether it's going to make the next game too stuffed, if it's going to fragment the story a little too much, or if they're going to somehow manage to pull all these different threads they have into something really cohesive and something that's well balanced. So it all depends, I guess. But yeah, the scene itself was like, it made me smile and made me feel good. But
cool.
We'll see how that goes.
Karak, what about you?
So I was not a fan. We talked about this a little bit, but the only reason I wasn't necessarily a fan is because Peter's origin story isn't necessarily real. I mean, it's hinted, talked about a little bit in this, but he's technologically based, we'll just say, like overall. And then you have Miles now. This is supernatural, chemical, whatever you want to say, DNA based. I don't know really, like, how are you going to differentiate the skills, for example? So you have the technical skills that Peter has. Your webbing, leap up and web everybody. I can't remember. Web Blossom, I think is what it was called. You have all these moves. I don't necessarily see, looking at Spider-Man and what he can do, I don't see them being able to replicate on the organic side completely different moves. They'll at least be somewhat the same, right? Because Spider-Man, even in the comics, regardless of how he got the powers, has somewhat similar moves. Yeah. So to me, what I would hope for is what you and I talked about, Maddie, 3-4 podcasts ago, which is that it's just co-op. Okay. Yeah, I would just love it. I would love for them to say, or they treat it like Mass Effect, and they're like, you female, male, but here it's Miles or it's Peter, and you go through the story, and there's some. Yeah, so there's some changes to the narrative, which is much easier for a narrative director to even write.
Kind of reminds me of Dishonored 2 in a way. Different
Dishonored 2, exactly. Right. And so I could see that.
Resident Evil had the thing where you can play as different characters and they have different paths that eventually converge. Something along those lines.
I could see that happen. But I'm just going to say, as a fan, I would love co-op. If I was able to swing around with another fucking Spider-Man and like there were more enemies or they were harder, there was different things, or what if you had tag team moves where it's like the only way to take a guy down because they already know how to defeat, or they already know how Spider-Man fights from this game. What if the next game a new enemy comes up and he's like, motherfucker, I got more shit. And a single Spider-Man can't take him on. So you're like, come on over, Maddie, and he swings in and he webs him up while I do something else. Like that kind of stuff could be awesome.
Well, it would certainly force the elevation of what was a tremendous experience the first time around. I think, the first Spider-Man delivered on everything it had to, whereas the second one, to really bring it to the next level, you'd think, including a second Spider-Man, that would change how bosses are designed. They're hard enough in certain ways, and you have to get creative enough with one Spider-Man. How do you make it where it's still challenging, even though you got two Spider-Men with similar abilities? We could also draw from potential narrative threads in the second game. Like, we know probably Venom's going to play a big factor in that game. Imagine what happens is, early in the game, the symbiote takes over Spider-Man, Peter Parker, I should say, and then Miles is it's almost like a prototype too. Have you guys played that game where you're saving the original game's protagonist, and he kind of becomes a bad guy in a sense? Yeah. There could be that where you play as Miles the first time through. I think Karak, you're more onto
Peter's
something.
The bad guy.
Yeah, pretty much.
That would work. I have a question for you guys, real quick. I got my ass smoked like a smoke show when I fought that first fucking boss for some reason. Fisk, the one who runs 8,000 miles an hour but looks like he could only run 2. Did you guys? I don't know what the fuck. My brain was just like, I could not grasp how to defeat that fuck. I probably died like 6 times, and I never died on any boss after that. Did you guys have any problems with a boss? And if Maddie, if you plan on talking about this later, feel free. I don't mean to jump the gun. You mentioned a boss, and I was like, I wanted to ask. Did either one of you guys have a problem with any of the bosses?
For Fisk, for me, mainly it was I was still trying to get used to the controls. So
Right.
I died a few times, but eventually, once I got the hang of it, I was pulling off the combos again. Because it starts off with just you versus Fisk, and then he brings in the goons, and then things get a little more complicated after that.
Yeah.
And like multitasking, all that got pretty...
And he's so fast!
Yeah, he is
He's so
super
fast!
But yeah, Fisk, that's Fisk. I mean, he's surprisingly physically able despite his rotund nature. But eventually, you know, I got the hang of like web shooting and then like tying him up, and then so it took some finagling, but eventually it took me a couple tries, but not like too many per se.
Okay, gotcha.
That was my experience at least.
Yeah, for me, I didn't struggle with Fisk too much because what I did was I'd web him up and then beat the snot out of everyone around him because I knew I could handle that until I could focus alone on Fisk because I knew I couldn't do it all at once. What I did struggle with, though, who got me 3 times, was the Shocker when you're inside the bank.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, he just I sucked at dodging his attacks, and I just could not get him originally.
Those are fast attacks. Are you talking about the where he's just like, and
I think he had like one where he like waved across the entire ground around him that you had to jump. And then you had to like, and then he would hit the ground in almost like a ray sort of thing. And I was still getting, even at that point in the game, I was still getting a feel for truly controlling the movement of Spider-Man, where I didn't think, oh, just double tap X and you'll just web zip kind of out of the way. Like I was trying to web swing, and I was playing it like it was freaking Spider-Man 64 to tell you the truth. But yeah, that was one boss that got to me. But part of it was also I was like fascinated at the same time. So I think that really played a factor because I remember, you know, I played all the Spider-Man game growing up. I said this in my review. I remember the Spider-Man boss fight against Shocker in the PS2 version, and how you're just chasing him down like a subway tunnel and you're trying to like dodge his little blast, and then you fight him up close and personal, versus when you're chasing him in the city. And it's this whole open world event, and he's like turning around, like shooting at you, and you're trying to dodge in midair and like web swing. I was like, this is just the pinnacle of a Spider-Man fan's dream. So, yeah, but that was the boss I definitely struggled with the most, was with the Shocker. And the final boss was tough. Final boss was tough.
Okay, for me, maybe because the E3 demo that they had in the Sony media area, it was the Shocker boss battle. So maybe I just, since I've already experienced it there. Okay. Yeah, that was what they showed back then. So I guess I already kind of remembered what to do, and so I didn't struggle too much with that boss. But all the bosses in this game, I mean, I have to just commend. They were all, at the very least, visually incredibly engaging. And seeing the dual boss battles, the battle against the two bosses with the Sinister. Oh man, like
that was my favorite. Tremendous. But would you guys not agree though that the ending part against fucking, you know, Sir Negative or whatever the fuck he's called,
Sir Negative, Sir Negative,
that was really rote though. It's like left and then up to leap over. Sure. That ending part, the other part in the truck, all that kind of stuff was fine. But then you get into that subway, and that subway felt like some kind of weird Sega Genesis game. What I mean is there was no flexibility. It was like, which I get. He's inside a subway train, so he can't. But it was like up. Okay, watch which way he's rubbing his hand, because it's like
a giant QuickTime event sequence.
Exactly. That's the way I felt. That was the only downer I had.
I think what they had was a good idea for, hey, this is a great place for the fight to finish up and to show the scale of the battle. Once the train comes up through the ground, but on the other side they were like, how do we accommodate the gameplay aspect? So I thought they did the best they could with it. I would have rather that than trying to fight in like a narrow train. It reminds me of old TMNT games where you'd have like 8 guys bundled up in one train car, and you're just trying to like mash your way through them all. It's like, fuck that.
I guess I was just surprised you couldn't like web onto a pole and like do something. It was more like just up. It's exactly like you said. It did
rest.
feel, now that I think about it, it feels like a QuickTime event they faked wasn't a QuickTime event.
Yeah,
that is exactly
much.
what it. Now that you said it, that is what it feels like.
Now you do eventually get to fight him again towards the latter part of the game, and I thought the way they did that was really cool, and with the
very cool
demon showing up.
Gosh,
yeah.
That was tough. That didn't kill me, but that one was tough.
Yeah.
Also, did you guys like the little joke about Spider-Man where he tries to stop the subway car and says, that worked last time?
Yeah.
That was awesome. The moment he did it, I was like, wait. And then he's all, that worked last time? I was like, that's the way to handle it. Right there.
I laughed out loud at that one.
Yeah, so did I.
That was awesome. And the final boss we went over. I got to say, though, for the dual boss fights, my favorite boss fight of that entire game was definitely Rhino and Scorpion. I thought that was like, they used those two's abilities and the environment you were fighting in perfectly.
Yeah, the level design to compensate for their two abilities and your ability to navigate around, and it all worked so seamlessly. And, if you knew what you were doing, it felt very cinematic. Like
cinematic,
you were
exactly.
playing a movie, but despite it being a game. It was awesome. It
was just amazing that they managed to make it feel cinematic. But often what happens is when I get a cinematic vibe from a game, it's almost like a trade-off. Like you're losing control, or
sure.
It feels kind of set. Like this cool thing you're doing, but like you just have to like walk into the space and it just happens. Like exactly. Like this is like you gotta dodge scorpions, like pull down the crane while Rhino's charging you, dodge Scorpion again, zip into Rhino, beat the snot out of him. Like that, I was like, wow, I feel like Spider-Man right now.
Yeah, exactly.
It was, they nailed that.
That's becoming a huge meme. I feel like Spider-Man, like everyone's saying that, but it's because it's true.
I think IGN, if I remember right, somebody posted on my review, I think they said it makes you feel like Spider-Man. I don't know because I didn't watch a review, but
like 3 times.
IGN, man.
Oh, did they? Okay.
Yeah.
So I will say that it's probably the only game aside from it's probably the only game that I can remember when I was performing moves where I was purposely risking getting hit to look cooler because it did look so. I'd be like fucking web swing, bitch, even though there'd be no reason to do it. I'd still be like, I'm forcing this because that would look cool if he swang in front of, and it did look cool. So it's like it paid off, and that to me is a big kudo to them, like that they were able to nail it.
Yeah, I agree, because I was watching Colin Moriarty's review of Spider-Man, and he was like, there is a combo list, and he said, like, his theory on combo list was pretty much like, if it's easier just to do a ton of damage by mashing the square button, why would you indulge in some of the extra moves that were there that were a lot harder to pull off? And I got where he was coming from, but at the same time, I was doing the same thing. Like, it'd be a little more simplistic to hold square, launch him up, and then mash square a bunch of times, but if I'm on a rooftop, you bet your ass I'm trying to like swing kick everyone off and watching them stick to the other side of the building. I mean, it just felt amazing.
Isn't that a Platinum trope though that Platinum Games does, where it's like, you can beat Nier by pressing 1 or 2 buttons, but you have more advantage. So it's not. I don't think that really plays out if you look at Spider-Man. It's
trusting the player to indulge in the other stuff there and have fun.
Then delivering on it. Like if they didn't deliver on it, I would completely agree with that. If they didn't deliver on the cinematic, result that happens when Spider-Man pulls off something fucking cool. There's nothing cooler in the world than sticking somebody to like the wall. That looked so. I mean, there's one part I have in one of my videos where like 9 guys are in a row stuck to the wall, and he's like, cops will be here, and I'm like, Jesus, that's good. I mean, that narratively, that fit perfect.
I mean, you could say that about like that complaint. You could say that about like fighting games. You could just search for the most optimal way to beat the opponent up, or you could also along the way bring in some swag and do some crazy combos and just look cool because that's what the game encourages. So I felt the same way. I was doing inoptimal moves for the most swag. I was okay.
Like, man, I look cool.
Yeah,
that was all that really mattered.
Trying to use like Spider-Man 2099's ability where you can like stay up in the air as long as you want and just like yanking everyone up and just punching the shit out of them like one at a time. Like, it's your turn.
Oh yeah,
pop.
Yeah.
Was I the only one though that? And I told this to Maddie when the thugs first showed up. They're slightly off time. They're fast. They attack 3 times, and they fucking track you like a heat-seeking missile. And when they show up in the groups, that first couple battles I had, I was like, am I doing something wrong? Because I was getting smoked. I was like, I mean, just like where I had to swing away to, get life back and come back. And I really felt that Insomniac did such a good job mixing enemy types, especially as you get higher, which we'll talk about. But you have flying enemies, and you're juggling like these dudes in armor, a fucking flying guy, a small dude, and then you're throwing them into each other. And once again, cinematically, it pays off.
Oh, dude, yeah. I mean, the Silver Sable troopers,
they're hard.
Very hard. I
Jesus
think they killed me more than anything else.
There was a difficulty bump, I think, that maybe Insomniac should have looked at, but that's all right.
For me, the thing that I struggled with most from a combat perspective was getting the dodging timing right. And I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was like the spider sense.
It was harder to see.
Harder to see. It was like white, and then everything else was like the particle effects were, a lot of it was like white or lighter colored. So it blended, and it was hard for me to tell. Whereas in the Arkham games, it was always very clear when to dodge. And so sometimes I felt like I should have been able to dodge that, but the game kind of got in the way a bit in there. But once like a dozen hours in, eventually I got into the flow of things, and I was pulling off some pretty cool stuff. But I'd say the dodging was my main thing that I just couldn't quite get a handle on.
No, I'd agree with that completely.
For me, it was the camera, when especially the Silver Sable, because the way they always in the crime activities, they'd always park their cars kind of in they'd form a triangle. And
so the camera would fuck.
Yeah, exactly. So you'd drop right where they all are, and you'd fight, and they'd always be up against the wall, so the walls constantly get in the way of the camera, and then when you wrap it around, you're hitting the car. It's like, Jesus Christ, man. It was the only really big issue I had.
Another big one for me, I guess, was the lock-on system, because there's no manual way to lock on.
Yeah, that it wasn't even lock on; it was a suggestion.
Yeah, exactly.
It was like maybe we'll see.
Yeah, like there are times I wanted to you press triangle and then you swing towards an enemy, and more often than not, I'd swing. There's a guy with a gun over there. I was trying to go towards that guy, but then he would go to a guy with a shield instead, who was closer by, and it would fuck up the whole rhythm. Yeah. So I'd say that's also a big complaint. That if they can extrapolate upon it and fix for a sequel, then it'd be great.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Even with these little flaws, overall, I mean, combat just feels good. It feels
definitely
good to beat
it
people
feels
up.
like it not only feels good, but I would say it replicates Spider-Man.
Yes.
The dexterity, fluidity versus Batman, which I joke around about him being a Campbell's soup can with legs, but that is the way he moves. He's a tank, and that's fine. If you look at the end of a battle, too, it's also cool, because at the end of a battle, everybody's not dead, but almost everybody looks dead in a Batman game. Like, you've thrown people on their necks, you're breaking their legs.
Yeah.
And what was cool about Spider-Man is everybody was still moving. Like, look at people stuck to when you stick them to the wall. They're still jiggling around. You're like, that's awesome. Even though I did find out, I did get it confirmed that people do actually fall to the ground sometimes and don't get stuck to the walls. I said that in the review, and people got mad. And I found out at a certain level, the game doesn't have the time to draw the animation, and so because I bounced somebody off a Brinks truck, and I'm like, that fucker's dead. Like, Spider-Man killed that dude. But overall, the combat feels like Spider-Man. I mean, it's a perfect rendition of Spider-Man.
For sure. And the way I like to put it with Batman is, Batman doesn't kill you, he just makes you wish you were dead.
Yeah,
that's a great way of putting it.
He'll cripple you so bad. But,
he single-handedly fills Social Security. Like, I mean, by himself. Like, it's crazy how fucked up he is. His tank, where he drives over you with his 3-ton tank, and he's like, don't worry, that's an electrified field. We just shock you. It's like, I fucking hit you with a 3-ton tank. You're dead.
Right.
Yeah. Back to the story stuff, though. Aunt May's death. We're going to get serious now.
Ooh, yeah.
Who teared up?
I was close.
I did.
I was damn near close. I was does that ever happen in the comics? I know Uncle Ben obviously always.
Yeah, there's been times in some of the comic lines where they died. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think it was
played with tropes. It played with tropes for sure, because you always go like, okay, Uncle Ben, he dies. Peter's like, oh, great power, great responsibility, yada yada yada. Fast forward. I'm glad they skipped all that. I didn't expect them to rip May right out of the experience. Not that soon, because you had a lot of time to hang out with her, get to know her as a gamer, not just as Peter's aunt. But You know, I think it was less of the death and more of the execution on
For sure.
how conflicted Peter was. That was such a
Yeah.
well acted scene. Like he really was like, I love my aunt. I don't want to
Yeah.
lose someone else again, but I fight so that you don't lose everybody.
Yeah, save one or save everybody. That conundrum that that Peter had to deal with, and yeah, where he almost got the thing in there in the IV, and he was like, "Fuck, I can't do it."
Yeah.
Because he knew like this is what Aunt May, that's what she would want. She wouldn't want me to save her at the expense of everyone else. So and you know, I thought, you know, she started getting sick halfway through the game, but I'm like, you know, they're gonna get the antidote and whatever. It's just gonna, they're gonna save her easy. So when she actually, when I hear the beep in the machine, I was like, wait, no way.
Yeah.
They actually, wow, they actually went that far. So it was a good, like it was a sour but good surprise where I'm like, they again, they didn't pull the punches. They did what they thought was right for this story, and I appreciated that. So I agree. It was shocking in a really good way.
Karak, what about you, man? Did it crack that rock hard heart of yours?
No, I don't get emotional in games, but I will say that. So I have a question for you guys before I answer.
Okay.
Don't you also though feel that this Peter, the way he's been portrayed, by the way, in this game, would have still said family matters, and I'm going to save Aunt May. And I'm going to try to figure it out some other way. I just do not buy the active killing, because that's what you're doing. If you're not helping somebody, and you can, you had a part in their killing. Like, I just don't know if I buy that he would do that. I get the great power, responsibility stuff. It's definitely ingrained. I guess my question would be, have we seen that before in Spider-Man? Maddie'd probably know. In the comics, has that character ever not sided with family? The reason why I say this is every movie, that motherfucker does everything, including ignore Gwen Stacy's dad and still dates her. She dies. He continues to try. And I do not like, to me, not doing it is the lack of trying. Maybe that's just me, but
I feel like, I think before that they said like she's only got a little bit of time. You should go see her. But I wouldn't be able to answer the comic aspect. I've read in the scheme of things a limited amount. But I think part of it with the story was saying, okay, yeah, Spider-Man is amazing. He can do a lot of things. You see him start off,
but he can't save those closest to him.
Yeah, to an extent, but it's also, he wouldn't have been able to do anything he did without MJ. You know, think of it that way. He can't be everywhere at once. He can't save everyone. And I think including MJ was like an exclamation point on that. Like, hey, he needs help. You know, and it's not just about Spider-Man. Like they say at the end, to take out Doc Ock, I think MJ says something along the lines of like, you know, talk to your friend Peter, because he would know how to stop Doc Ock because you helped build him, right? And so it reaches to different parts of his character and also shows his limitations as Spider-Man. So for me, I took away from it as like is necessary evil the right term? I don't think so, but it was one of those things like he had to accept it happened because he can't be everywhere at once. He can't risk everyone around him dying in order to try to save his aunt.
Yeah,
I mean, I find it fine. I just had to ask. Go ahead, Young.
I mean, I wouldn't say there was a lack of trying. I think he tried everything he could. Like he had to get the cure. It was the main thing, and he had to pull all stops to do that. And when it came down to it, there was just the one vial that they needed to. And you know, I don't know if it's a storytelling contrivancy that maybe you find, but you know, I just feel that with Uncle Ben's death, I think the whole lesson there was, like on some level, it had to do with Spider-Man being very selfish starting out. He has these powers.
Okay.
And, you know, he pursued what he wanted, and it came at the cost of something very dear that he eventually came to regret. And I think that lesson of great power comes great responsibility was so deeply ingrained after that. that I think this Spider-Man post Uncle Ben death, I think it makes sense that he did that. I think pre Uncle Ben death, pre great power, great responsibility lesson, sure, he would have maybe done the selfish thing, but I don't know. I guess they don't really, because we don't see the origin
the
story
genesis,
of this,
exactly.
the genesis of this Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So
that's the thing that actually bothered me a little bit. I needed some of that
something,
in a way.
yeah, for sure. But I guess based on my general knowledge of who my ideal Spider-Man is in my head, it makes sense.
Okay.
But yeah, I guess it depends on what context people have for who Spider-Man is.
Yeah, I do find it depressing. I'll say that, like when so they celebrate her being 5 years there at the feast, and then what's his name, fucking, Mr. Negative decides he's gonna fucking go off and be a bad guy, and then she's running it, and then she's dead, and it dawns on you later, you're like, wait a minute, who's running the place? And I was joking with one of my friends, going like, well, if she's dead and he's dead, fucking are the homeless people just running around eating their food? Like, if you look at the way like everything is set up, there's usually a chain of events, and I don't think we saw what happened there after she's dead. We don't, like, do we ever go back? Did you ever go back
I don't
to
think
Feast?
you can.
You can, but did you? Because I was just wondering, is like somebody there, or are people? I would like. I didn't do it for the walking walk, but I'd like to know if people are like, where is everybody? Nobody's running this fucking place.
Miles was helping.
Yeah.
Oh, Miles was helping. That's true. Yeah, Miles was helping. That's true.
And when
I
the
didn't even think
antidote
about that.
was being given out, wasn't that like near Feast or was that somewhere else? I thought that was at Feast or somewhere.
I remember they showed it in like a little newspaper, but I don't remember.
They showed it. Yeah, I don't
of
remember
it,
either.
so-
I don't remember either. I just found it funny because I was like, it was sad because all this support system for all the homeless people got killed, and I was like, all right, well, those guys are fucked.
Yeah.
But
I'm sure
it was cool.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll find a way to rectify. I mean, I'm sure there's various levels of. I don't know. I guess they don't really resolve that.
Oh no, they don't care. By the way, I should make sure everybody knows I'm joking. I don't give a fuck about what the homeless people in that game are doing. I just found it funny and sort of sad because I think past it, and I'm like, what's her effect? Oh, she's Peter's aunt, and then all of a sudden I was like, wait, the other guy just fucking left the place, and he was the one. And remember, she's on the phone saying like, I don't know about your money, because she's on the phone, and you can tell something's already going wrong with finances there before the bad guy's even introduced. She's on the phone, and you can eavesdrop on her. And I was just getting this idea of this lady trying to hold everything together, and then she dies, and everybody's like waiting, just going, "Where's the food? Nobody's doling out our mash."
Yeah, I guess Peter will have to take up the mantle
Peter. Oh my God, what if the second one starts out? Peter's just fucking running Feast, just delivering food. I could deal with that.
Interesting.
Well, him and MJ are together, so I don't know if MJ helps. Hey,
Yeah,
I'm sure
who cares?
it's a little thing that they'll just insert a character. They'll say the police handled it, and boom. That's all.
This is why you.
One
This
line
is why
of
you
audio.
don't ask me in-depth questions, because I've been thinking about this shit.
I admire it.
MJ can die in a fire.
You don't like MJ?
Fucking hate her.
In
Let's
this
get
game
into
or
that.
just in general?
This game. Goddamn. When
All
she. Okay, yeah, let's get into this because Mr. Matty and I disagree, and he's wrong.
Oh man.
Okay, here we go.
Sips water.
Here's what pissed me off. There's one thing that pissed me off.
Okay.
There's a cutscene, and he comes outside and he swings, and she says something like, "Now this is after a bunch of shit's already happened." She's like, "You sound like more emo than normal," or something like that. And I was like, "Bitch, I fucking just saved like half of New York, and fucking people are dying around me." And the way she treats him, and the way she's so wishy-washy about everything, which I get. People are going to say, oh, it's about the relationship and the problem. But even her, I don't know if you guys remember, but she says why they broke up. And I'm sitting there going, dude, that sounds like a third grader. Like that's something a kid at recess would bitch about. Like it just seemed odd, her character. I just did not like her tone or anything. And I know Maddie disagreed because I tweeted Maddie that direct M, and I was like, dude, blah blah blah, and you're like, what? I love her. So you go, Maddie. You liked her. Try to sell me on liking her.
I think a big part of what I liked was, and I think it's just because at the core of the experience is, of course, Spider-Man, and I like the way they fed off each other, and you felt like initially things were on cracked eggshells. Like they had a good relationship. Okay. They were working through problems that, you know, came up because Peter was Spider-Man, of like, hey, I know that you have to save the world, but you have someone you have to love too. And while that does sound selfish at first, I think if you put yourself in her shoes, it makes complete sense. So when you pick up the game and you feel like, all right, they're kind of uneasy, they're coming back together in unpredictable circumstances and falling for each other again, I think you see fear start to take over as she's kind of like, you know why we broke up? Like, don't do this shit to me again. Anxiety, apprehension. It was humanizing to me personally. I found it in a way where I was like, okay, is that a positive quality? No, but this may be a little off topic, but I look at it like the same way I look at Lara Croft. Like when people see a negative attribute, and I'm not saying this is for you, but in general, when people see negative attributes to characters, it doesn't mean that they're a bad character. I think a flawed character is often the most interesting because no one's perfect. You know, people always complain up a storm that Rey from Star Wars is perfect. She does everything right. She always saves the day, yada, yada, yada.
Mary Sue.
Mary Sue.
Yeah, there we go.
And she is.
Exactly. And so when you look at that versus like Lara Croft, where, you know, she's selfish in nature, she's much like her father. Yeah. She doesn't think beyond herself and the treasure she's taking and what those repercussions could be. And I won't get into more on that for those who want to play it, but you know, she is very self-centered, and that's a flaw, but it makes her ultimately a more interesting character to dive into. So I wouldn't say MJ is selfish, but I'm just saying I think that level of like, hey, pay attention to me a little bit, like they're dating, he should. I appreciated that. You know, I thought, like I said, it was humanizing.
Okay, what about you, Yon?
So the main reason they broke up was because she felt like Spider-Man was being overprotective, or that Peter was being like, no, you shouldn't do this because that's dangerous. Was that?
That's what I picked up on. Yeah,
I think it was a mix of that and like he was just so busy saving the world all the time that he never was there to be with her, and she was in a relationship but really alone all the time.
I kind of understand where some people might find like her tone annoying. Like she feels, I don't know. Sometimes it feels like she's talking down,
needy or talking. Yeah, definitely talking down. Yeah.
Yeah, to Peter, who's trying like his best to mend old wounds. But I guess part of it has to do with we don't see what led up to their breakup. We don't see.
Yeah, again,
there's no context there, so it's hard to say. It's hard for me to say like, she's right or he's right, because I don't know who did what that eventually led to the breakup. But you know, on some level I get where Mary Jane is coming from, but I think the circumstances that the game presents, where Spider-Man saves her or something, where she's in a very dangerous predicament, and then Spider-Man comes in and basically saves her, and she's like, why'd you do that? Like, maybe there are other scenarios where Spider-Man maybe he was too overprotective, where he was like, no, you shouldn't do this. I'm saying you're not going to do this because it's dangerous. I'm not going to let you be your own individual. You know, maybe there are other times where maybe Peter did take that too far.
I think they showed that in the Silver Sable camp. Like, he hops in thinking that MJ's being held at gunpoint, which he
saves her and
he saves her and knocks him over. Silver Sable runs in, and it's all chaos at that point, where he didn't need to save her. He didn't need to track her down at that point.
Right, but she was being held at gunpoint. And I feel like anyone seeing their ex-girlfriend or someone they care about being held at gunpoint, that would be their reaction. I thought I was going to lose someone. I had to come in there and save you. And not to mention that she was infiltrating a military... armed, like, you know what I mean? Like, she's a journalist, and she doesn't have any superpowers. She's just a girl, and you know, competent in what she does. But these are military. You know,
they had her Metal Gear Soliding through the entire thing,
right? And you know, like that scenario, you know, even frickin' Solid Snake would have trouble infiltrating that shit.
Yeah, he'd need a boss.
So I think the concern from Spider-Man's part was perfectly understandable. And yeah, he did kind of ruin things, and yeah, she could have, you know, if he would have left things alone, maybe she could have gotten away with it. But at the same time, when you care about someone, and they're doing something that dangerous, I think it's understandable to be concerned. And then when you see them held at gunpoint,
yeah,
I think the immediate reaction would be, I gotta save this person.
Yeah, right.
And Mary Jane, I think, kind of, she doesn't see that side of things in that, maybe in that particular scenario.
right.
Again, there might have been, maybe it has to do with that building to a point where she's like, I can't see your side of things anymore because, like, you've done this in other smaller things as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where again, we don't know though because they don't tell us.
I think that's the thing is like the excellence of this Spider-Man is it starts out with Spider-Man 4-6 years after he's become Spider-Man, but the actual weakness of this Spider-Man is that it starts 4 to 6 years later. And you do, when you're trying to hit an emotional whatever, the only resonance you have emotionally is whatever's happened since the starting of the title screen. And I think that those are just little things that, like, for some people, they're going to buy it and be like, hey, because they maybe, like Maddie, maybe knows a little bit more and it makes a little bit more sense. But for some people, it can just feel off. Is all.
One of my favorite parts of the entire game was when Peter and Mary Jane were working together in Grand Central Terminal to take out all of Lee's thugs. I thought that was such a well executed part.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I kind of thought that was
part.
the culmination of them starting. Actually, I think it happened beforehand. I might be wrong, but I just thought like moments like that, or this is what happens. It kind of punctuated what she was trying to say to him. Like, this is what happens when you trust me. Like, we can work together. We can do this. Just trust me. So yeah, like I get both sides of the story. I'm just saying, like I'm not trying to defend it. I'm more so presenting the other side.
Oh, and you don't need to. Yeah.
Now, with all that said, there were aspects of MJ where I'm like, I feel like you should be more understanding of like his side of things. But at the same time, overall, I didn't dislike MJ. I actually quite liked that she wasn't a damsel in distress. That she was going out of her way to play her part in saving the city and all these different things. And I do like when eventually everything clicks and they do eventually start trusting each other to a point where they can each use their specialties to
you feel the rebuild, I think. You feel them go through the motions. So I like
there's two sides of the coin, and I see both. I'd say I see both sides. I see why some people might find her annoying and a little much, and the way she berates sometimes, I feel, Peter Parker. But then eventually when they do start working together and they show what they can do when they work together, I think that's awesome. And overall, I do like the representation.
So maybe the question is, when you're playing this game, we assume because Mary Jane keeps talking about has Peter changed, she keeps asking, keeps saying, like, maybe the real question is that we already know Peter has changed, she hasn't.
Right.
What I mean is she really hasn't. She's doing the same stuff. She reacts the same way. He's already 6 months, I think, right? 6 months not together. I think they said, yeah, it was a certain. She said when he walked into the restaurant, they said a certain amount of time. So maybe that's, just twisting that angle and looking at it from a different standpoint. Maybe they were trying to indicate that she, with all her berating, whatever, that she hadn't realized he had changed. And so she was still acting the same way, which you guys said, as they build trust together, you sort of see that. One of the best scenes in the game is that train station scene. Easily. I don't like the Solid Snake shit at all, but the fact that you could look up and see him come out of the air vent and shit, I was just like, I really liked all of that stuff.
Yeah, it was
that
cool.
Was so cool.
Speaking of that scene and stuff, a big part of that was Lee. And we'll go into his past a little bit. So a big part of the story is this demon's breath. We find out that it was supposed to be a cure to save Harry Osborn, who was suffering from some degenerative disease. And one of the first test subjects was Martin Lee. So I guess what we'll hammer on here is really his past. What did you guys think of that revelation and how Martin Lee connected to the narrative, how he was trying to make the city suffer to teach Norman Osborn a lesson? Did you find that to be a good trait for a villain in a superhero world where we get a lot of common tropes? So did you guys like how we figured it out and what it entailed?
Go ahead, Young.
Yeah, so his backstory, so he kind of basically killed his own parents because of the
Yes, that too.
experiment, right? Like
Apologize for not
inadvertently.
mentioning that.
That's
Yeah.
sort of where the demon was born. Yes.
Yeah.
I liked that. I really liked Mr. Lee as a whole. I would say I like the duality. I like the emphasis on. I mean, it was a very literal interpretation of like our inner demons. You know.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Very very on the nose, but also yeah. Every villain needs some kind of tragic past to, I guess, give some context to why they're doing the things that they do or why they are who they are. True. And I'd say for Mr. Lee, they did an adequate job at showing two sides of the coin. Again, much more literally in his case.
Yeah.
He has this philanthropic side to him where he basically established Feast.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you've got the terrorist.
Yeah.
And
well, in the apology note, did you guys read the apology note that's inside of his office where he apologizes to Aunt May? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like you can tell there's. I mean, he is Two-Face. He's a copy of Two-Face to me, at least. But yeah, you can definitely tell there's that duality there, which is actually quite. I actually found him pretty enjoyable as well as a character. He was literal. I didn't really think about that until now. He is like Mr. Neg. That's very literal now that I think about it. But overall, yeah, I think he was well done. Who's the actor? Do we?
Stephen O. Young.
Stephen. Okay. Oh yeah.
And I thought he did a good job. I'd say elevating scenes. Like when Peter first goes into his office and he goes, you do the puzzle for the yin and yang, and you start figuring out what he's really up to, and you exit, and there's Martin Lee standing right there, and he's like, "Oh, Peter, hello," and it's like that. He's like, he knows who you are at that point without you being in the costume, because there's only one way you could have gotten out there alive.
Yep.
You obviously know who he is at this point, and then May comes in, and there's this. It reminded me of Homecoming with that tension. Where like Spider-Man was in the car with the Vulture, and you're just sitting there like, oh shit, this is tense, because they both clearly have something to say to each other, and they're trying to use subtle hints to deliver it while not tipping off May that something's going on, and so I really like that, and when they do a good job presenting Martin Lee as this really nice guy, obviously based off pre-release coverage, we knew he was going to be something much more evil. But I thought the way they built him into that evil character, that the way he would explode with emotion and yell and scream, it was something that didn't feel expected for such what seemed like an even-keeled guy who just had his motivations, he had his intentions, he had a plan, he was like, all right, I'm going to do it. I expected less emotion.
Yeah, I expected him to be like, he's faking the good side, and then the evil side is really him. But no, it's like, no, he, deep down, there's goodness in him, and he wants to be philanthropic and all these different things, but he's consumed by this other demon, this lust for revenge and all these different things. And again, very literal, but I think very well executed in a way that it makes him feel like a real person with very fantastical circumstances.
Absolutely.
So I quite enjoyed he could have stood on his own as the main villain in this game. I think. Yeah. Like they didn't have to. I think that Octavius elevated it even more, but I feel like him by himself, he could have done an adequate job at being the central villain here.
Yeah.
I thought they were going to do that.
Good, I thought he was.
Yeah. But what about you, Karak? Did you like Martin Lee's past, the revelations that came with it, how he connected to the core of the story?
Yeah, I thought they were okay, but I liked the tangential stuff. I liked the stuff on the side, the letter. The letter to me, that kind of stuff, that just story tells. And an open world is even harder because you don't know if Yong's going to see that, but I'm going to see it. So then does he miss a story element? So to me, when I was looking at his pictures in his office of family and then seeing that letter and the way it even says, like he's even like, I am both people. Like, he's very open in that letter. He's like, I am both people. Like, you're going to hear about me being a terrorist. It is true. And you're just all, geez, okay, because that's usually you do, just like Young said, you'd expect him to be like, I'm not a terrorist, I'm fighting for freedom. And you're like, dude, you killed 500 people. Yeah. How the fuck does that work? But instead, it played off quite well as a guy who's like, and he was sort of, in a weird way, he might have been fighting with his demons, but he seemed to walk with them quite well. As yes, he was fighting them, but at the same time, he sort of knew both sides, and I liked that. I loved everything around his house, around his office. If you look around, there's all these little snippets that sort of indicate a more thoughtful person than the person you see overall when it just smashes in. As for the killing of the parents and stuff, that kind of stuff, I'm so burnt out on the tropish, like, this is what happened, blah, 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 that I don't find it bad. That didn't impact me. It was the side things that got me to believe in him.
I get that.
Yeah, it was.
And I liked him.
Yeah. Same with me. Like, I wasn't like, oh my God, no, the parents. Like, that part was just like, oh, that's the thing that happened.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Like,
yeah, exactly.
That's what. But after all that, the character that culminated from all that, I quite enjoyed everything.
And you gotta, people need to listen to that fight too. That first fight when you're in the square, and the stuff he says, like, again, it does pay off to listen. Sometimes a boss will quip, and you'll be like, "Fuck you, man! I'm punching you in the face." Like, you don't care.
But
there's in the not the butcher, the vulture, and fucking Shockman, whatever the fuck his name is. Those guys, I almost got it. When those guys are fighting, they're saying stuff too. And I have to say, kudos to Insomniac to consistently deliver narrative while those things are happening, that if you listen, there's actually quite a bit of information on, like, why people are doing specific things. That's rare.
That's what I love about the medium of games is, like, whereas in a movie you might have some exposition, try to explain all these different angles.
Yeah, right. Forward.
In a game, you can, like, look around the environment, see the apology letter and all these different visual elements, or be on the lookout for auditory signals that storytell sometimes way more than the big scenes. And that's why I love this medium, just that extra layer of storytelling you can do with the interactivity.
Absolutely.
And I love the fact that we're all sitting here talking, and you guys will mention something that I did not see. And then, so in a book or a movie, you're like, the word is right there. We all saw that word, right? Or the bad guy's right there. We all saw that bad guy. But in a game, it's like, some people would never have seen the apology letter. And there's something about that that's very fascinating.
I agree. What delivered to me he was a good guy was not only some of his actions in the story, but it was also in that very same office. If you look on the back right behind his chair, there's just a ton of plaques, like, year after year of, like,
certificates.
Yeah, all the great stuff he's done, how many awards he's won. Like, he's not just a flash in the pan good guy. Like, he's done years and years and years of community service, and has generally helped the public, and people love him, and understandably so. But he seems more of a low-key guy, not a superstar who's put into the spotlight, and he's like, you don't know about the other side. Like, he just seems very down to earth. So I definitely
He also has a great
that.
naming convention. Feast. Like, what a fucking evil name for a place. I mean, yes, it's a feast. I get that, stupid. But the first time, I was like Shield in my brain. I was like, what the fuck does feast? Like, what does that spell? Why would he call it feast? But it's such an evil sounding place. But what's weird is there's a duality in that word. Feast for feeding the people who are homeless, but feast is greedy. And it really indicates, like, some kind of gluttonous feeling to it. And I thought they did a good job on that.
Absolutely.
I'm curious to see just where Norman's story goes, because if you think about it, everything that happened in this game, all the different villains, it all ties back to Norman's shittiness. Yeah. Norman Osborn's shittiness. He was what kickstarted Mr. Lee's quest for vengeance. He is kind of like, Octavius had some of that inner demon with him, but, like, Norman accelerated that. He almost, like, sparked it. And it all kind of ties back to that guy who just, underhandedly, he's the mayor and all this shit, but deep down he's all
he's
in
a shitball.
He's a shitball. He's all about the glory and the power, and the ripple effect of all that is basically what happened in this Spider-Man game. All these different guys, the central villains, Mr. Lee and Octavius, their lives went to shit because of you could argue, any number of ways, but
it felt naturally, organically rather, tied together, where it didn't feel like, Otto Octavius just happened to be working there. Like, the idea that they originally had from the start for Otto and Norman Osborn to get together and to work, and how Martin Lee got involved in that. it felt very natural. Didn't feel like, how did he end up there? Like, it just happened, and there was no questions left for me to ask there, which is what I always think is like a sign of a good world being built. But while we're talking about Norman Osborn, we definitely need to talk about the the post-credit scene a little more extensively, because we don't know if this is stuff that's set for the DLC. We already know the heist is about Black Cat, but there's also the Silver Lining DLC and the heist DLC. So I don't know which of those or what villains those will focus on. I imagine Venom's being saved for the Spider-Man
next
2
game or
full
something.
entry.
Yeah. But for now, we'll just talk about how Harry is depicted as this friend who MJ and Peter dearly care about. You see, you'll go through the backpacks and you'll see like them with a picture together. I think they were they got lost on the east side or something like that, or I think they went to go see the Statue of Liberty, something like that. They got lost, and they were like recounting the story. Yes, the research labs where you're hearing these audio tapes of Harry. You're connecting to him in a way. When you finish all of them up, MJ and Peter are talking about it, saying like they hope he's okay. They haven't heard from him for a while,
right?
And then you have this big reveal that here he is in the tank. He's in New York this whole time, underneath our noses, and MJ was literally at one point like a button press away from finding Harry, which is even crazier. So, what did you guys think about how they're going to roll the Venom into the universe, how they handled Harry Osborn's disappearance? He apparently is on a European vacation, but he's actually very sick, in fact, and now he's pretty much in, I wouldn't say like a stasis pretty much, until he can hopefully get better. What did you guys feel about all this?
Was Harry Osborn ever, like in the comics, a candidate for Venom?
I'd never heard of it until this game.
Either. So it was certainly surprising, and I don't know how comic fans will feel about it, but for me, I'll just have to see. Again, with these cliffhangers, it's always about, we'll see where it goes. I can't say right here, right now that, that's fantastic, great narrative choice. It all really depends, but it certainly delivered an element of shock value. But as for how they handled Harry Osborn, he was there without being there, which was really interesting. He was kind of the audio log NPC.
That's true.
The recurring audio log NPC, and they vaguely hint at what happened. They hint that obviously they were close friends and all these different things. The labs were really interesting. It kind of showed his more philanthropic side, where he wanted to make the city a better place through all this research. And so it kind of goes along the lines of what he's trying to do with Octavius, which is use science for the betterment of mankind. But in terms of how they use the Venom thing to like that's very peculiar. Because Venom is traditionally he's a villain, so I guess this is the route they're taking Harry Osborn. Now, does Harry in the comics, does he always culminate into a villain? Because in Spider-Man 3, he was kind of like a villainish type of...
Yeah, it always seems like he becomes
he's
like
always the spoiled kid villain.
Yeah, like the friend who eventually, splits up the group and MJ's forced to pick a side kind of character insertion. At least based on movies and some of what I've read.
He doesn't feel like a spoiled brat in this one. He feels like a genuinely good guy who's where life handed him just shitty cards, a shitty hand, and then Norman's taking it upon himself to do whatever it takes to ensure his son lives, and then him turning to Venom that might just, obviously the goo, what is it called, the
symbiote?
That would change his personality. Doesn't it tend to change your personality?
Yeah, kind of much more angry.
Right, and all these different things. And that kind of also parallels Octavius' circumstances.
So I'm reading an article on GameRevolution.com, and they're talking about the ending, and they, in answer to your question about the comic, they say, as Norman Osborn raises his hand to the glass of the tank holding Harry, his head down in defeat, a black web fires out and hits the glass. With the hype surrounding the upcoming Venom film, combined with fans' potential knowledge of Harry sometimes being Venom in the comics, it's easy to link the two together. So I guess he has been. Yes, it seems that is very much the case.
Yeah.
I mean, it's no doubt it was Venom, but I didn't know historically.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, exactly. Same. So overall, I'd say he wasn't present enough for me to be able to say one way or the other. I just know first impressions, which is in this iteration, he doesn't seem like a prick. He seems like a good guy. And then he's Venom now, so we'll see where that goes. That's all I can say, honestly.
Karak, how'd you feel?
I'm going to take a guess is probably wrong. I feel that he was having you fix those research stations for a nefarious
Underneath it all?
Underneath it all.
Okay.
Because he did say something about the CPU power when you fix these research stations, we get more CPU power or something like that. And I'm like, why the fuck? Because he is philanthropic. Like that is exactly how he plays out. But I'm for some reason the way they were done, because they're an odd. When you look at Spider-Man, there's a couple odd things that I don't necessarily think are bad design or poor design or even average design. They seem to be designed for a reason. The research stations are odd. It is indeed the audio log person, like Young was saying. You know, instead of you got the guy with the MP3 player as he's dying, going like, "I'm dying, oh my god!" and you grab that.
Happy there's none of that.
Happy there's none of that. Here you have him, and he's certainly talking about like all this stuff. But then when you start finding out that like his dad is, so there's also the interplay of the movies too. In the movies, he Norman Osborn usually treats Harry fairly poorly and always looks down on him. And yes, he would probably save him, but I like how they twisted that in this. It was like he's doing everything he can, you know, to save him. So there was a question there. But for some reason, those research stations, I don't know why, but here's another thing. They're in their own place. They have their own graphics. They have their own... assets were spent to show these things on top of roofs everywhere. And I'm like, exactly, why are they here? Other than what he's saying. So I don't know if that'll happen in the future, and they'll be, you know, and he's doing it to track Spider-Man. Like, oh, I was actually fixing the sensors, because all of them had to do with fixing sensors. And I was like, you know, is he gonna use it to track Spider-Man later? Is it Norman or is it Harry? You know, whichever one. As for the Venom, I don't give a fuck. I fucking hate Venom. And here's why. What? You already got Miles as Spider-Man. You already got fucking Spider-Man as Spider-Man. And you're introducing another dude that acts like Spider-Man but in a black suit. And it's like, I would have much rather had that be a different bad guy. Because it feels samey to me. Right? Like, if the sequel is those two as co-op, let's say, and then Venom's the bad guy, whatever. That won't be half as interesting as, you know, Mr. Positivity or whatever his fucking name is.
My guess is, you know, that they're going to try to expand on the gameplay a lot. We talked about how Miles and Spider-Man don't play differently, but Spider-Man and Venom do. And the Ultimate Spider-Man game, way back when, let you play as both. And it was one of the best Spider-Man games made. You know, you could go around the city and kill people. It was really strange for a Spider-Man game.
But that's the result. That's not the action. The actions he took are still the same. He still web slings and he still sticks to shit.
Absolutely.
So I guess in my brain, if you understand what I'm saying, I guess in my brain it feels like too much Spider.
Well, I mean, you got one who's nimble and flexible, but you got one who's more bronze, eats people, very.
I mean, I'm not saying
vicious.
I'm not saying he couldn't be good. It's just, I guess I was hoping that the end would be a different bad guy. But I also liked Hobgoblin and Green Goblin more in the movies. I like those characters. I wasn't a fan of the movie the Venom and what was that, 3? Was that Spider-Man 3?
Yeah, 3.
I don't think anyone liked 3.
Three's
a great
Peter
comedy
dancing.
flick.
Not a great point of reference for
emo dancing Peter. So but I mean, I think it was a pretty good stinger. I guess a pretty good, you know, overall. Yeah. It just didn't hit with me as much as I would have hoped.
I would say for me the prospect of how Insomniac will create set pieces around fighting another web slinger is exciting.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true.
Because like with Octavius, he's got a couple arms. What can you do with that? They did a lot with it. Like the way they represented the weight of those arms, the impact of every time they claw through, and then the way they employed his powers in this amazing final boss battle set piece, and then like that vertical boss fight, like that vertical sequence at the end, like stuff like that makes me think they can do a lot with like villains' powers and make them really cinematic and all these different things. So, you know, you got to play as Spider-Man. What it would be like now to fight a Spider-Man-like entity through Insomniac's kind of crazy set piece visions. So I'm actually really looking forward to it. And Venom just happens to be one of my favorite villains of all time. So there's some bias there for sure.
Cool. Are you going to watch a movie?
The Venom movie? Yeah. Absolutely. I'm excited and skeptical. I'm like,
right in the middle. Right in the middle.
It'd be hard to pull it off.
Yeah, like I overall, go ahead.
Did you guys notice there's a little Easter egg there too? When you're fixing Octavius's arms, before you fix the CPU, if you move the arm, it stabs like it's trying to kill somebody.
Yes, I did notice.
And then once you fix it, it starts moving normal, and you're like, "Fuckers, I know." Yeah. He even says like the CPU's like fucked up. Like he even that's one of the things I loved. I absolutely loved. And every single time you did a puzzle, he said something. I loved that. It was so good because it lodged Peter as a smart guy. And he was like, "Oh, this chemical, but it wouldn't work well with skin." You know, and there's all these question marks, and then you see that thing stab, and you're like, "Oh fuck!" And it looks violent when you control it. It's like, whoa, and you're all, that looked cool. So I loved, So I guess now that I think about it, Venom, fighting against. I guess the problem with me is I like the one main smart guy controlling a bunch of guys because I feel that that's more dynamic to me, and Venom not necessarily known for wearing a fedora and being brainy. So like hopefully he's with somebody else.
I think for that we're gonna have Norman. I think he's gonna be the man pulling the strings in the next game. He has. I mean, he's clearly.
You mean and controlling his son, but at the same time control. Okay,
I believe so.
That could be cool. Yeah.
Who knows if we'll see him as Green Goblin.
Well, there's. I found during my research prior to the show, I had found that there was an Easter egg in the game that you could find pumpkin bomb prototypes in Spider-Man PS4.
Yeah, so, you can.
Yeah, the grenades.
The pumpkin bombs are from Hobgoblin. No, they're from Green Goblin.
Yeah, so I imagine they're hinting at it's already something he is working on and come next game. I mean, this game plays with fans. They know how Spider-Man fans and superhero fans in general get that the second you see a little hint, speculation goes awry.
Yeah, for sure.
And they knew what they were doing with the ending, and I think they knew what they were doing when they put them there. If they wanted to portray Norman Osborn as just this corrupt but yet caring human, I think they wouldn't have put that in there. But I think to hint at when he's going to take action on for whatever reason.
Sure. That makes sense.
Yeah. And I like that a lot. So what else do we have here?
One thing to note about the labs, and now that I forgot about this, but I think the main narrative thread behind that was that Harry was doing it for his mother. I think she started the whole program, and then he kind of took over in her stead for her legacy.
And and the dad didn't care about it and let him go to shit, right?
Yeah, so I don't know if it is that simple. Or like you said,
maybe it is that simple. No, maybe it is that. So maybe you're right. Maybe it is that simple. I think I was probably just looking for some more narrative.
Harry has a kind of like a Martin Lee duality. You know, he is a good guy as we can tell, but you know he is angry at his dad for abandoning what his mom had worked hard to preserve, and then
that anger feeds into Venom.
Yeah, and then Venom versus Green Goblin, father versus son, Peter in the middle trying to keep his best friend from killing his own father.
Maybe, yeah.
Do you know what a sequel would be cool is if the bad guys weren't necessarily just after Peter, but they were indeed fighting each other. And so you're trying to save New York from Venom and fucking Green Goblin constantly going at each other. That could be really cool too, to where, you're trying to save people. Because we didn't get a chance to save, well, you saved people in the car wrecks, which repeated billions of times. God. But
Mash Square.
What'd you say?
Mash Square.
Oh, dude. But that would be cool if there was, I always like it when everything's bigger than me. Like the world, everything going on is almost unhandled. Like you can't handle it because there's so much. So yeah, it's true. I forgot about the pumpkin bombs. There was that. That is true. Was there any glider blueprints anywhere that anybody saw? Yeah, not that I saw. And I looked like a fucker, and I couldn't find anything. Yeah. And I didn't even find. Did we? Was it? Wait a minute. Yes, there was. I thought on one of the whiteboards there's a propulsion theorem for fuel.
Well, I feel like I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying I feel like it would have been coupled in with that speculation and that theorizing. I'm sure there has to be some type of hint, but more than just the pumpkin bombs. But I mean, for me, I was just psyched because it brings me back to I love Spider-Man 1, the original Spider-Man movie. It did so much for film.
For sure,
me too. It's a classic to me.
One of the best bad guys ever, right?
Yeah, and I also love how Green Goblin looks in that movie, and
fucking A.
And you know, to imagine that presumably Spider-Man 2 would be a PS5 game. You know, to think of how that would look, I'd be floored. I imagine. You know, I just love Green Goblin so much, so that would be cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Man, yeah, next gen is right around the corner.
Yeah, so we're getting there. Probably a year from now.
Yeah, a year.
Well, wasn't the rumor out that 7 nanometer demo kits had been sent to
Is that right?
developers? Yeah, I think Resetera had a thread where there was like some leak that Microsoft. I know AMD just yesterday did announce that they're helping Microsoft and Sony with magic sauce. So, whatever that means.
Should be interesting.
Yeah, it should be awesome.
And then to wrap up this, that's pretty much all the story stuff that we wanted to touch on. We'll just talk about some of the side activities, suits, unlockables, progression, just kind of a free-form discussion. So if one of you guys would like to kick it off, maybe a favorite suit or, you know, something you liked in the open world. Actually, I have an idea. I have to kickstart it. I apologize. I gave you guys the offer, but I'm going to take it. All right. Let me talk about one thing that bugged me a lot was finishing the Black Cat side quests and then finding out she's not there. And I'm like, You get a dope-looking suit. I'm like, okay, fine. And then, you know, we're playing during our review period. I sign on and I see the heist is an announced name. Not at this point. We had not seen a trailer. Announced named for the fucking DLC. I was like, those motherfuckers. I know exactly what they're going to do. And lo and behold, right where we're on the review period, we find out Black Cat's going to be in the DLC. That fucking bugged me a lot.
Yeah, that is a qualm that I have. I mean, when you're releasing a DLC like a month after your game launches, like that content is pretty much almost done. And at that point, you're purposely excluding it to sell separately. And, you know, that's not to say, like, Spider-Man feels like, you know, say for that, it's like, I still feel like I had a satisfying package there, you know? It's not like I felt unfulfilled by it, but it would have been nice to not separate that cool thread and then, like, extrapolate it like in a separate package.
Face-to-face interaction just to see her rather than, oh, hey, Spider-Man, it's Yuri, and Black Cat just stole all her equipment back. I'm like, why are we doing nothing about this now? Like, he would jump into action any other time.
Right. But yeah, you know, I don't know.
It's a small thing in the scheme of everything the game I felt did right, but it was something that I haven't had a chance to say. I almost forgot again. It's good to get that off my chest.
I will point out, because I agree with you on most of the time, depending on when you release your DLC, some of it's done. But I happened to ask Brian Fargo about this morning in our podcast, and one of the big questions was, you know, can you explain how DLC is done and why is it that a month later you can do DLC? One of the things that he pointed out, what you just said isn't necessarily the DLC, right? So seeing her, that wouldn't be DLC because it would be very easy to make those assets and you talk to her, let's say, and she goes off or something.
Yeah.
So the DLC most likely called the heist, there's probably entire missions built. He said one of the things that happens, especially with gray boxing, which is where you set up your level, but it's just gray boxes. You don't even, that's where the term comes from. It's not, you don't have any textures or anything. He said that might be done. For sure. So he was like, he wanted to point out that the skeleton of the DLC absolutely has some kind of build. But he said, when you look, he was talking about Bard's Tale, the new game they're releasing. He said, we have the beginnings of another dungeon. But to put that other dungeon together, assets, artists, you're talking $100,000. Mm-hmm. And he was like, so yes, there is a skeleton there. But what they do is they get that out, the publisher, all the money changes hands, the sales start going on, and then they can look at their DLC and say, okay, we can move on with adding the assets and so forth because we're bug testing prior. Or we're in our, depending on if they use the waterfall development. So, I mean, I agree that I don't like seeing it that soon. But here's the thing, guys. I want it now.
Right.
So, to me, in a weird way, I'm glad it's a month, even if it causes this kind of discussion where we're like, nah.
Sure.
Because the game is so good that I would personally love weekly DLC. I would kill for that. If they were like, boom. Fucking, you got this bad guy, and then next week you have some more random missions because please, Insomniac, fix that shit. That would be fucking incredible. But at the same time, you have the public, the minority that's vocal, gets mad about that, and so a lot of publishers pull back from it. And it's unfortunate because we'll never know. I think having No Black Cat sucked. I didn't let it affect me like Maddie. Maddie was like, what the fuck?
Well, dude, I just think of Spider-Man 2, the game where you're running missions with Black Cat, and I'm like, I like this a lot. And then...
it was awesome to see you that mad. You're just like, what the fucking, are you kidding me?
Well, because it feels like, it felt like a jab to it. Like, I just got like a slight jab to the liver, like they were just like,
I got you.
Here's
almost
fucking
like a
cool
tease.
Suit. Be happy. I'm like, okay, all right, I'll take it, I guess.
And you walk in, and it's like, she took all of her stuff, and there's some shit laying here, and you're all, uh-oh. What's happening? It's like, that's it. That's all that's happening. Fuckers. But
like,
that's just my thought on it. It's I would agree with Yong that most of the time, though, you look at a month out, it can be a little difficult to figure out what they're doing, and it could certainly be the unfortunate bullshit. I just don't know if Insomniac and Sony are like that. Really, when you look at it, like if they would even do that, it seems like Sony would be the company to just say it's in the main game if they could have fit it in there. I think
they've done little things here and there that aren't quite as extensive as what like a company like EA would do. Like they've delved into things like microtransactions. They're there in like Uncharted 4.
That is true. That is Uncharted 4
to a scale that would draw too much attention.
Would you say it's a well-practiced scale to make sure that people don't make YouTube videos? Sometimes it feels like that, doesn't it?
I don't know, honestly. I honestly don't know. But that I will say is Spider-Man, as it shipped, stands on its own.
Yeah,
and it is
absolutely
an incredible game all around. And I just I don't know, in the grand scheme of things, I'm not like pissed at the. I'm not like too mad that they did what they did, but I also understand why there's trepidation around this.
Taskmaster can fuck off. Would you guys agree?
Hell no. He can fucking stay. I thought that was such a cool idea. I was like, yo, he's
terrible.
You love your B-tier heroes or villains, and I was like, yo, Karak is gonna love this. To hear you say that breaks me. How?
Is Taskmaster like a real thing?
Yeah, he's a real character.
Yeah.
He's a B.
I've never heard of him until this game.
Well, trust me, it feels like you wish you would never had when you play the game. It's the drone missions. I should just.
Sure. Okay, I remember this.
Just after about the 4th drone mission, I was like, you can suck a dick. I was mad. I was just like done with this.
They're interesting challenges. You really have to. When you're just navigating through the city willy-nilly, it's like you're like, oh yeah, I'm pretty good at this, and then you realize, oh, when I have to like go on a
go through the little
path and the little holes, and you're like, oh shit, this is actually, it requires a lot more finesse than I anticipated.
It absolutely does.
Yeah, so for the people who love those kinds of challenges, it's a nice little
I like the fight challenges he put on you. I loved those, or the stealth one when he'd be like,
ones were my favorite.
And they were hard sometimes. Like I failed a number of times on those where they'd be like, you got to kill him without warning anybody. And sometimes you were like, man, I really got to think this through.
Yeah.
Well,
so Suits.
It was
Suits,
very
real quick.
arcadey.
Oh no, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I liked the arcadey feel of the stealth challenges, and that's why they were my favorite. Because the first time you're like, okay, it took me about a minute, and then you're like, I want that token, because that fuels that progression. So you drop in, and I remember one of them I had got down to the point where I got it in 14 seconds, and it was like 10 enemies removed, and I was like, wow, if I break that down, I was getting about an enemy over just every second, you know, and that felt good. It felt like a level of mastery.
Yeah, you develop like a pattern of, okay, if I go here, and then do this,
right.
this, I can do it in like 10 seconds.
Exactly.
So it encourages repetition. It's really, yeah, it's interesting.
You were talking about suits?
Yeah, suits.
I was just gonna say, what were you guys' favorite?
Vintage.
For me, it's the anime without a fucking, or whatever you want to call it, cell shaded.
I remember like sitting right here. It was like 12 at night. I unlocked it. I was like, no fucking way. I put it on. I was standing on like the perfect building where there was like a reflection, and you're just there in the foreground, and you stick out like a sore thumb, and it's beautiful. I love the vintage one. Oh my god, bro.
Yeah, the comic booky shaded looking one is pretty fantastic.
Absolutely. Man.
You know, I was disappointed that there was no black suit Spider-Man, but I think maybe they're saving that for the next game with Venom now coming at play. That I was disappointed.
Or DLC, maybe, right? Maybe that'll be because didn't they say there's going to be a suit in the DLC?
That's true. It could potentially come out as DLC, but that would have been my favorite suit. I just loved Black Suit Spider-Man. I don't know why.
What'd you think of Noir though, Yong? Did you like that suit? The goggles?
It's badass. I've never read like the Noir series of Spider-Man, but yeah, I quite enjoyed
He looked goofy. I loved it.
Yeah, it is goofy, but I don't know if that's what a Noir Spider-Man would look like.
Yeah.
So I was kind of into it.
What'd you guys think of the wrestling suit too? I thought that was awesome because they even talk about Hogan. They're like, or Hulk. They're all because you can see like Spider-Man versus Hulk on posters.
Yeah.
And he shows up, and when that thing opened up, and it doesn't fit him. It looks like somebody blind and with bad fucking manual dexterity sewed it together. It's just so good, man. So good.
It screams beginner, and you can see like he's clearly wearing sweatpants. It's like, all right.
Yeah, oh,
like
dude,
this.
yeah.
It's
that
awesome.
was awesome.
The one with the skull and the
Ghost Rider is what I called it. Yeah.
It is. That's dope as shit.
Yeah.
It is, isn't it?
I don't know what Spider-Man that's from, but
neither do I. I saw that. I was like, where did they find this?
I just said Ghost Riders because obviously that's the only guy I know with a fucking burning head. But when I got that one, I was like, I got to make sure I don't capture review footage with this because people get pissed. But I was like, this is who I am from this point on. It's awesome. And when he's killing people, he's on fire, and they do the slow motion, and you're like, that's insane looking.
Yeah.
That's dope.
And especially the suit powers that came with it. Like, his was one of the more unique ones. Some of them felt like, all right. But, like, his was like, you have fire spitting out from you no matter where you're at.
Yeah.
That's why one of my favorites was the Iron Spider. You know, how it changed the fighting animations. That was cool.
What'd you guys think of the powers overall? I wasn't in love with the skills. I thought they were pretty mundane overall. The skill trees. I didn't really fall in love with those. Were you guys fans or?
The way I look at it is, it was more of like to slow down the pace at which you learn Spider-Man's arsenal, so you can learn your current set of maneuvers and then get a little something else and then master that and then pile it on top until you got a pretty well-rounded idea for how all the combos flow. But yeah, nothing was like, oh, that's really, it was just like rudimentary additions.
What you expected, I guess, right?
What you expected, exactly.
Yeah.
But they were functional.
The only thing that really stood out to me was the ability to, like, if you got a perfect dodge, you could like press triangle and one hit that person.
Double finisher.
Double finisher. Things that I wouldn't say made the game easier, but it was like those Silver Sable fights when I had finally come around and I was like, I wouldn't say exploiting those, but like really trying to make good use of those late game upgrades. I was like, wow, okay, this is a lot more manageable now, knowing I can spend 2 bars and finish off 4 really annoying opponents, or I can dodge this guy shooting at me from a distance, knock him out, that type of stuff. But yeah, I completely agree. Like Yong said, very rudimentary. It was just kind of like, all right, it's a skills tree.
The web gadgets were pretty cool though. Some of them add an extra layer of new things you could do with combining your gadgets with your skill set.
Do you know what I did though? Did you guys have a tendency? I got the skills for less damage up close, less damage ranged, and then the ability to heal more from focus. once I used those, I never looked back at the rest of the powers until the end of the game.
Like the mods?
Because they were so... Yeah, the mods. I just put them on and I'm like, fuck, man. I mean, any other mod came up and I'm like, yeah, it's not going to be as good as these because if I mess up on a dodge, I'll take less damage. So...
on stealth segments, I would have a set for stealth, and then I'd switch that. Oh.
Hold on one sec.
Nope, that was me.
Just, hold on. Your webcam disappeared.
Dude, I disappeared. Discord died.
Oh.
And I'm back. I apologize.
All right, we'll just, I'll just edit that out. Just go for it.
Okay, continue. By all means.
Where was I? All right,
Stealth,
so
you had a section.
Yeah, for the mods, I would essentially switch out my combat set and then switch in my stealth set, and then once I did the stealth segment, but that's about as far as I got with that. Yeah, there wasn't anything special there. I did like the one where, like, if you do air attacks, you charge up with like electricity, and then ground. So that one I really liked and exploited quite a bit. But yeah, most of them though were pretty. They weren't big enough upgrades where I'm like, where I felt worth paying too much attention to. So I hope they can develop that in like a future game where it feels more like you're building a deck of cards and you're able to make different builds and stuff like that. And
your Magic the Gathering Spider-Man game.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. Like in Monster Hunter, for example, like you earn different weapons and items and gear, and they all, based on how you combine them, it really does make a big difference.
A huge difference.
Point, yeah, huge difference. So if they can like implement some of that into Spider-Man using the mods, that'd be really interesting.
It felt rather than building a stronger, more powerful Spider-Man, you were kind of filling the holes in for some place you weren't as good in, which can work, but it didn't feel like the skill level. When you watch, for example, like Batman Arkham combo trials, you can clearly tell someone who's really good at the game. They're using the gadgets at the right time. They're timing their triple counters perfectly versus someone who, plays just a decent amount. And I don't know if Spider-Man has, I don't want to say that depth, but like things like the suit mods could put it to a level where you could see a player like if they had put more focus on it, rather, you could see a player who is clearly more of a higher level of skill based off how they built their character. Because like I said, a lot of them were just like make the game easier, such as time slows down when you perfect dodge, and perfect dodges weren't too hard to pull off.
No, they weren't.
Slowing down time in general, it slowed down, not time. Actually, I shouldn't say in general, but rather just the person you slow dodged. So you would just beat the snot out of them. They were a free knockout no matter who they were. And so for that, I was like, all right, like this is kind of useful, but I agree that the electric fist one was the only one that I was like, okay, this feels different. This changes how I play. I'm going to web yank people into the air more to build that up and chain to the ground. So yeah, I would like to see better suit mods. I completely
Go ahead.
I was just saying, more along the lines of like that electric mod. If they can implement things like that actually change the flow of and your style, that would be fantastic. And also the ability to save sets of those mods.
Yes, that's what I was going to mention. Yeah, the ability to save sets. Also, he says he's like Gadget Man. Some of them are gadgets, others are nothing. Like the raise your ability to take less damage, they didn't show more armor on you. So it was like, all right, that's weird. I'm a passive player, which means if you tell me this is you can buy two skills. One's an active skill you have to press a button on. The other one's a passive skill that just always gives you a little bonus. I'll pick the passive one almost all the time because it's just like then I can, I know it's going to always be doing something. But the sets would have made me play more because I didn't like going into the HUD, which is delayed. I don't know why they delay that menu. You click start or whatever, and it's like, whoop, and it pops up. And it sounds stupid, but it was like going in there and switching those gadgets out. I was like, like it takes too long. I will say this, the best part about the suits, they all, their skill that they require to unlock is connected to something in the game world that makes sense. So the technological stuff, those points have to do with the technological looking suits, and the battle suits look like battle suits. And I thought it's a small thing, but when I was playing it and it was like, you need a tech point or a research point to get this suit. And when you get it, it's the or like an Iron Man suit, and you're like, I got it. I really thought that was a good step in Insomniac's direction. I thought they did a really good job there.
I agree.
All the little details is what makes this game shine, I think.
Especially pulling away their weapon and watching them run to get it. I don't know why. I would always play with one guy. I'd find one last guy, and I'd pull his weapon out, and he'd run and grab it, pick it back up, pull it out. I did it like 20 times. It was a blast.
It's really competent, the AI.
Yeah.
They really go after you. So
yeah, they definitely do.
They don't just stand around like one at a time. It's like, no, they want to kill you.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was going to say. I'm doing a battle, because when I was testing, I was going to tell Maddie, he was saying, do some of these make a better player on harder difficulty. It is definitely harder. I found that out. And then they have the next difficulty now added, right? Didn't they patch the ultimate in? I would say that the battle, I'm doing a video of Batman versus Spider-Man and how they fight. The one problem with Batman is they stack up so often, and people won't attack. They'll you'll get two enemies, and one guy's like, "What's up, Johnny?" And he's just in the side, and you're like, "Dude, what are you doing?" And in Spider-Man, those fuckers you'd see your flash, and you'd have that quarter of a second, and then the guns would go off, and I really liked that they would attack from off screen. It was because the sound was good enough that it told you where they were, so you could figure it out.
Yeah, I also liked how the AI in Batman, I didn't find it an issue because it was to make.
Can you move closer to your mic a little bit, man? No, it's all right.
It was just to make the gameplay system work. Batman, a lot of the enemies would circle around you and I said in my review, pretty much let you play whack-a-mole with their faces. Whereas in Spider-Man, a guy with a gun, I know it's going to sound simple, but a guy with a gun would run up to a high surface and wait and try to shoot you. Whereas some of, the shield guys would play up close, and then the people behind him with melee weapons would kind of wait their turn to strike, and it felt well paced, where to create some space between me and the melee weapon guy, who I'd have to knock up in the air, I'm gonna punch the shield, stun him a little bit, and slide through his legs, and now I got a body between me and him. And then maybe I'll do that double kick move you can do, where you just send someone flying, and it's like, all right, now I've knocked them out of sight, out of mind, even though they're still alive, and now I'll web up to the guy who's on the perch and take care of him now that I've cleared the trouble around me. It was that kind of subtle, like Yang was saying, it's the little details, that subtle stuff that you can do that the game kind of allows, that really makes it such a strong combat system.
Yeah,
definitely.
But that's all we've got, man. That's all we've got. You guys got anything else you want to add to this spoiler cast?
Dude, I could talk for 3 hours, so you're gonna have to call it.
Okay.
At some point, I mean,
I'll call it there. I think we got it all, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I hope they improve upon the side activities to be a little more varied. What I will say is that what they have here is an incredible foundation. That I think they've got the formula, the basic formula down. Now it's all about building upon what they have here. They've got the technology, like the engine. They kind of know what they're doing with that now.
Right.
They can now focus on making more creative things. And so in that sense, I think this game is a wonderful foundation upon which I cannot wait to see what they do next. Like, if this is their starting point with Spider-Man, like, the sequel is going to be, I think, man, it's going to blow everything out of the water. Like, from Arkham Asylum to Arkham City, there was so much more that they added that just really took things to a whole new level.
That makes me excited right there. I didn't even think of that.
I can only imagine what they're going to do now. It's going to be amazing.
Absolutely. All right, well, that wraps that about wraps it up then. Yang, thank you so much for joining us, man. It was
thank you. It was a blast.
This was fun. Hope we'll stay in touch. And
absolutely, we're gonna work on that. We're gonna work on our communication skills. It's not gonna be another 3 years this time.
Sounds good.
Be sure to check out Yang's channel. It'll be linked in the description down below. Karak, any final words?
3 hours later.
Yeah, right. Sorry, I shouldn't have tapped you on the shoulder there.
Yeah. Because I have a ton of stuff I could talk about. So, but nope, it's a good game. I'm glad we got it. I'm glad we got God of War. It's a fantastic fucking fall. Despite negativity that's going on and stupid shit from companies saying dumbass stuff. CEOs, by the way, should never be allowed to talk again. But we're getting these amazing games. Red Dead's on the horizon.
Yes.
Which I fucking can't wait for. There's just so much cool stuff. So I'm excited, man.
absolutely. It's gonna be a good time. And last question. I apologize. I know we were wrapping it up, but last question. Game of the year for any of you guys? Spider-Man?
You mean is Spider-Man game of the year?
Is it your game of the year?
I'd say God of War edges out for me.
Yeah, me too.
It's just better paced, and the side activities, they all have like little stories. Like it's less rudimentary and less. Yeah, it's just the side activities mainly kill it for me. Or not kill it, but it's what really
brings it down a little.
Brings it down compared to God of War, where God of War's side activities felt a little more fulfilling, and that they offer some narrative, or they feel varied enough where I can get into.
I get that because God of War, in the scheme of things, I think it only had like 12 side quests, so they felt very
quality over quantity.
Yeah, so I get that. I get that. For me, Spider-Man. Yeah, it's there. I think I'm still kind of like you said. The side activities, they weren't bad, but it's just like that thing where it's like I got to give myself more time to digest before I go like, yeah, game of the year. You know.
Sure.
So I get that entirely. All right, well, let's wrap that up. Thank you guys so much for listening to our spoiler cast for Spider-Man PS4. If you guys got any other ideas of games we should do a spoiler cast on, fire away in the comments down below.
Yeah, for sure. And they're a blast to do.
Yeah, because we haven't done one since Prey, I think. So, we got to do this more.
and No Man's Sky. Well, that wasn't a fucking spoiler review. That was you and I doing a review of a game.
It's just bitching up a storm, really.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll catch you guys next week in episode 171. Peace out.
Peace out.